Welcome to Module 5 on Order of Operations. Right now, pause this video. Make sure you've got your notebook for taking notes and a writing utensil. If you need help getting a notebook, please let your teacher know today. Remember, note-taking is really important. This is where you're going to practice your problems. You don't want to have to rewatch these videos every time you need to remind yourself of something. Plus, you can use your notes on all the quizzes and assessments, so it's in your best interest to write these things down. Today we're going to be talking about order of operations. That's going to include understanding exponents, order of operations with grouping symbols, order of operations with exponents, and order of operations with combining both integers and exponents. So before we can dive into order of operations, we need to make sure we understand what exponents are. So in a new section of your notebook, I want you to write this title, Writing Expressions Using Exponents, and underline that so you know you've got a new topic. We can rewrite repeated multiplication using exponents. The base is the number that's being multiplied. The exponent is the number of times we multiply the number times itself. So for example, 2 to the third. I want you to write this in your notebook. 2 is your base, 3 is your exponent. 2 to the third is not 6. 2 to the third means 2 times 2 times 2, which actually becomes 8 because 2 times 2 is 4 and 4 times 2 becomes 8. So if I want to rewrite repeated multiplication using an exponent, 5 times 5 times 5 times 5, all the bases have to be the same. So 5 is your base, and you're multiplying that times itself 4 times. So that's 5 to the fourth, which would not be 20. If you were to actually calculate 5 to the fourth, that becomes 625. But that's not what we're being asked to do. We're being actually asked to write this using the exponent itself. So we stop there. For a problem like this, the bases all have to be the same to do this, so we keep the base as an 8, and there's 3 of those things being multiplied, which again is not 24. 8 to the third, if I put that into my calculator, becomes 512. Right now, pause the video and try this one on your own. Welcome back. You should have used 2 as your base, and there's 3 2's there, so that becomes 2 to the third, which again is not 6, that becomes 8. All right, new topic. I want you to write intro to exponents. You can shorten introduction to intro. This is a typo, so let's get rid of that. If we want to evaluate 2 to the fifth, that is the same thing as 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times another 2 is 8, times another 2 is 16, times another 2 is 32. So 2 to the fifth becomes 32. Remember, evaluate means solve. 11 squared, again, that's not 22, it's not 11 times 2, it's 11 times 11, which is 21. Would you pause the video and do this one on your own? 2 to the fourth should have become 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, and times 2 is 16. All right, so let's dive into order of operations. Order of operations with whole numbers is your new topic, so write that down and underline it. Just like there are rules on the road so that we don't crash into each other, there are rules in math so that we don't crash into each other. We need to follow the order of operations so that we all get the same solutions. So right now in your notebook, I want you to write this acronym, PEMDAS, down your page, just like that, leaving some space to write next to each letter. When you originally learned this, you learned that P stood for parentheses, which is true. But now we have to do some grown-up order of operations. We have to understand that there's more grouping symbols than just parentheses. This could be parentheses, it could be brackets, it could be your absolute value bars, which you'll learn about in semester 2, or it could be the big fraction bar. So there's more than just parentheses you have to look for when you look for your grouping symbol. E stands for exponents, which we were just working on. Now, there's a reason I write the M and the D next to each other. We want to remember that we don't do all the multiplication first, then all the division. We do multiplication and division in order, left to right. If you haven't been doing it like that, you've been taught incorrectly or you've been doing it incorrectly. So make sure that you fix that now. In your mind, remember, multiplication and division are essentially the same operation in order from left to right. And same thing for addition and subtraction. We add and subtract in order, left to right. Make sure that you have written everything that's inside this box in your notes before we move on. So let's try these. we need to evaluate the following. So we're going to first look for parentheses or any other grouping symbols. There are none. Then we're going to look for exponents. There are none. Then we're going to look for multiplication and division. There is multiplication and division. I'm not going to jump to the multiplication. I'm going to do the multiplication and division in order from left to right. And it's important that we're starting to learn to bring things down. Let me show you what your work should not look like. 25 divided by 5 is 5. 3 times 8 is 24. Let's see, I need to add 6 and add 3. So that's going to be 30. Nope, that is not how we are showing our work. Instead, we want this to start simplifying to look like a triangle. That's going to help you build the skills that you need later on to solve equations. So 25 divided by 5 becomes 5. I'm not using the plus 6, so I'm going to bring that down. 3 times 8 becomes 24, so I bring that down. Now I have the addition and subtraction in order from left to right. 5 plus 6 is 11. 11 plus 24 is 35. Let's try another one. No parentheses on this one, no exponents, but there is multiplication and division, which we're going to do in order left to right. And we're going to bring down what we don't use. The 4 times 4 becomes 16. I bring down the plus. 10 divided by 2 becomes 5. And I bring down the minus 5. 16 plus 5 is 21, and 21 minus 5 should have become 16 there. You pause the video and try this one on your own. Try to make yours look like a nice, neat triangle like mine does when you're done. All right, you should have recognized that there were no parentheses or other grouping symbols, no exponents, but there was multiplication and division. The 3 plus just comes down. We haven't used that yet. 2 times 6 becomes 12. I'm going to bring the minus down. 15 divided by 5 becomes 3. 3 plus 12 should have become 15, and 15 minus 3 should have become 12 there. Nice job. All right, let's add in some grouping symbols. So remember that we said grouping symbols can include parentheses, brackets, the absolute value bars, and the big fraction bar where we have some stuff on the top and some stuff on the bottom. So let's take a look at these. I want you to notice that what we've got is grouping symbols inside of grouping symbols. You want to work from the inside. So the first thing I notice is this big set of brackets. And I want to do order of operations inside of that until I'm done, which means the times 4 is just going to come down over and over because I'm not going to use that until the end. Inside of the brackets, there are other grouping symbols. So I'm going to bring down the 7, bring down the plus, 11 minus 1 becomes 10, and I bring down the divided by 5 and the brackets. Inside the grouping symbols, I don't want to add 10 and 17 first because multiplication comes before addition and subtraction. Division comes before addition and subtraction. So I bring down the 7 plus, 10 divided by 5 is 2. And I'm still bringing down that times 4 that's on the outside. 7 plus 2 becomes 9. And now I can lose the brackets because I've done everything inside of them. And 9 times 4 just becomes 36. Let's do another one. I want you to notice that you have a 3 times on the outside. That's going to come down over and over and over. And we're just going to focus on what's inside the brackets first. And we're going to do order of operations inside those brackets. So the parentheses comes first. 14 plus 4 becomes 18. And there's nothing else to do inside of the parentheses, so I lose those. Division comes before addition. So this becomes 2 plus 6. And 2 plus 6 becomes 8, and now I can lose the brackets because I've done everything inside of them. And 3 times 8 becomes 24. Again, notice this nice triangular shape that I'm creating with my work as I bring everything down and simplify it together. You pause the video now, try this one on your own, and make sure that you're trying to make that triangular shape with your steps. You should have brought down this 42 divided by, and then focused on what was inside your brackets. I don't want to use the 1 plus or the times 3 yet. I want to do what's inside the parentheses. 13 minus 11 is 2, and I can lose the parentheses because I've done everything on the inside. I'm still not done inside of the brackets, so I'm going to bring those down. Multiplication comes before addition, so this becomes 1 plus 6. And 1 plus 6 becomes 7. I'm done with the brackets, so I can take those off, and 42 divided by 7 becomes 6. Now let's add in some exponents. So no grouping symbols. I don't see any parentheses or brackets or absolute value bars or big fraction bars. So this becomes 9 plus. The exponents come before addition or multiplication. 4 squared is 16, and then times 2. Multiplication comes before addition, so this is 9 plus 32, and that becomes 41. Remember, 4 squared is not 8. Use your exponent rules. 4 squared is 4 times 4, which is 16. You pause the video and try this one on your own. You should have squared your 6 first, so that becomes 2 times 36 divided by 4. 2 times 36 is 72, and that becomes 72 divided by 4. 72 divided by 4 is 18. Nice job. Now let's add in parentheses and exponents. It's important to pay attention to whether or not your exponent is on the inside or the outside of your parentheses. So remember, grouping symbols come first, so I'm going to bring down this 40 divided by, and I'm going to focus on what's inside here. 2 to the third needs to come before subtraction, so I'm going to bring down the 16 minus. Remember, 2 to the third is not 6. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. And then I'm not done with what's inside the parentheses. 16 minus 8 becomes 8, and now I can lose the parentheses because I simplified everything on the inside. 40 divided by 8 then becomes 5. This one's a little bit different because now your parentheses are on the outside, or excuse me, your exponents are on the outside of your parentheses. We focus on inside the parentheses first. 3 plus 1 is 4, and now I can see that I need to square the 4. 4 squared becomes 16, and 16 times 5 is 90. All right, another type of grouping symbol is our big fraction bar. What that's telling you is to simplify everything on top and simplify everything on the bottom before you divide. So on the top, 13 minus 8 becomes 5, and then 6 times 5 becomes 30. On the bottom, exponents come before addition and subtraction, so this becomes 2 plus 25 minus 12. 2 plus 5 is 27 minus 12. Let's see, this becomes 30 on top. 27 minus 12 becomes 15, and 30 divided by 15 is 2. It doesn't matter that this means division. We divide last here because we have the big fraction bar, which tells me to do everything on top and everything on the bottom separate. Same deal here. I want you to pause the video and try this one on your own. You should have done 7 times 6 first and gotten 42. And then add those together and you get 54. On the bottom, we do what's inside the parentheses first. I don't try to square 8 squared and 5 squared. That's not going to be correct. Order of operations says parentheses first. So this becomes 3 squared. 3 squared is 9, and 54 divided by 9, you should have gotten 6. All right, new topic, exponents and integers. It's important to slow down and think about whether your solution to these types of problems will be positive or negative. Remember that a negative times a negative becomes a positive. What we want to look for is our negative on the inside or the outside of the parentheses? When it's on the inside, it means you are repeating that negative over and over and over. So this means negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. Well, if we do the first two together, negative 3 times negative 3 becomes positive 9 because a negative times a negative is a positive. But then we've got this other times negative 3, so my answer becomes negative 27. This one's different because it's negative 5 times negative 5 because the negative's on the inside of the parentheses. So this becomes a negative times a negative is a positive 25. So just because you see a negative doesn't mean your answer is going to be a negative because a negative times a negative becomes a positive. You pause the video and try this one on your own. For this one, you should have done negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4, but times another negative 2 is negative 8. For this one, you should have done negative 4 times negative 4, which is a positive 16, because a negative times a negative becomes a positive. Same topic, no reason to jump to a new topic in your notebook. This time, our negatives could be on the inside or the outside of the parentheses. I want you to notice that for this one, it's the 7 that's being squared, not the negative, because the negative's on the outside of the parentheses. What that's actually telling you is to keep the negative in front and to square the 7. Well, 7 times 7 becomes 49, but there's a negative on the front, so that should be negative 49. For this one, you've got your negative on the outside, and I know you're conditioned to do a negative times a negative becomes a positive, but remember that exponents come before multiplication. So there's a negative on the front, and then I'm going to add in some brackets here just to help us keep this separate. -2 times -2 times -2 is what that exponent is telling us. We've got the negative on the outside. Then we've got -2 times -2 is +4, times -2 is -8. Now we're ready to do a negative times a negative becomes a positive, which will be +64 here. You pause the video and try this one on your own. Hopefully you saw that the negative was on the inside of the parentheses for the first one, so it's -4 times -4 times -4. -4 times -4 is +16, but times another negative becomes a -64. For this one, the negative was on the outside, so you're actually just doing 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9, 9 times 3 is 27, 27 times 3 is 81, but there's a negative on the front, so we have to put a -81 in there. Be careful about plugging this into your calculator. Your calculator is actually not that smart. It can do basic calculations, but if you don't put these parentheses and brackets and negatives exactly right, it's not going to understand what you're trying to do. Just because you put it into your calculator and got a negative or a positive doesn't mean that's correct. All right, let's try some with all of our rules combined now. First of all, I like to clean things up when I can. This -3 does not have anything to do on the inside. So I'm going to get rid of it so that it looks like this. And then before I move on, I want to change any of these minus and negatives. So what I actually have is -3 plus 3 times 9, which is much simpler to deal with than this original problem. And then don't forget your rules. Multiplication comes before addition. So we bring down the -3 plus. 3 times 9 is 27. These signs are different, so we subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. So you get 24 for that one. You pause the video and try this one on your own. Hopefully you noticed that there wasn't anything to do on the inside of these parentheses. And then I could do keep, change for that one. I don't do that for this one. It's not a subtraction problem. And then I want you to think through, this is actually now -20 plus 15 divided by -5. What should have come first, addition or division? Division always comes before addition. So that's -20 plus 15 divided by -5 is -3. And then -20 plus -3 is -23 here. And that's it. This video will be available on Haiku if you need to rewatch, and will be available on each skill for Module 5 in ALEKS. You now need to log on to ALEKS and complete your Module 5 practice problems using your notes as reference, and don't forget the video will still be there if you need it for something. Don't forget that as you need help in ALEKS, you can click on the explanation and it will bring up an explanation and give you the solution, but then it will give you another problem to try. You can also click Y for more help. Don't forget that at the end of each module, you need to go back to the home page, click on the circle with the 3 lines, and click on assignments. And then you will need to take, you'll need to take quiz 5, which matches with module 5. Thanks, guys.